Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3874BN. Today's date is April 1st, 2026, and the title of the episode is the war with Iran? Who is Trump really at war with? Election moves and countermoves. Now, we all know Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs. You do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear and scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. Every time the headlines scream, regular people sell, every time regular people sell, the institutions are right there, waiting with open hands. You built portfolio insurance for a reason. Don't let a red day hand it over to the people who cause it. That's why I tell people to talk to Noble Gold Investments. They will help you build a long-term plan and, more importantly, help you stick to it when the noise gets loud. The minors' up and downs, that's weather. The long-term trend, that's climate. And the climate has been favoring gold for 5,000 years. So the next time you see a dip and you feel that knot in your stomach, ask yourself one question. Am I making this decision, or is Wall Street making it for me? Don't let them shake you out of the position you built to protect yourself. That's exactly what they want. And right now, all new qualified accounts receive a 10th ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Real gold in your hands, that's the whole point. Go to X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see that Europe right now, the deep state players, they are now panicking. Think about this for a second. Yes, we are bombing Iran. Are we at war with Iran? No, it's a mission. Congress did not declare war. We have a mission going on to remove a proxy army. It is a proxy army for the deep state players that actually control Europe, Australia, New Zealand. You can even throw China in there because China was also part of all of this. And Trump, he decided to go after the proxy army and remove the proxy army to expose the true individuals, the true countries, the true deep state, because that is who he's truly at war with. You see, you have to remember, the deep state, the EU, and the rest, they've used Iran as a force to control everything in that region, to assist China. Because you have to remember, everything was supposed to be shifted to China. So Trump now has gone in and decimated their protection of their system. China doesn't have it. The EU doesn't have it. Australia doesn't have it. None of these countries have it anymore. The deep state players don't have the protection. Now, if they did get a nuclear weapon, Iran would be much more powerful to protect all this, and Trump wouldn't be able to go in right now. And most likely, this is why he decided, you know what, let's not wait. Let's remove the proxy army because, again, we have to expose the true army. Now, again, Trump is not going to attack the allies per se because, again, how would that look on the world stage? So what you do is you attack the proxy army. Then you pull the curtain back and you expose the true enemy of the people, just like he did with fake news. And that's what he's doing right now. He's exposing these countries, China, the deep state players. Now, China's not going to say anything. They're going to stay very, very quiet. And he wants the EU, he wants Australia, he wants all these countries to make a decision. Whose side are you truly on? Are you following the central bank, the World Economic Forum, the deep state players' plan? If so, so be it. If not, then show us. So basically, Trump has given them a decision. And the decision is have the oil prices continually go up and put a lot of pain on the countries, which it looks like this is the path they really want because, again, they're following their agenda, or open up the strait. Now, I know he keeps saying Iran has to open up the strait, but that's the signal from the other players. Because, again, who is really controlling the strait? Trump is. The Navy is, not Iran. He's putting pressure on the EU, on Australia, on New Zealand, all the deep state players. And you could see at this point in time, he wants them to fold and say, these are international orders. Remember, under the law, no country can actually claim this part of water because under international law, it should be open freely to everyone. Think about what Trump is doing right now. This is what this has all been about from the very, very beginning. And he's forcing them to say, okay, it is international waters. We will follow the international law and it will be open to everyone. There will be no country that controls it. If you listen to what Marco Rubio said, he said just that. He's letting everyone know. And this is why when Marco Rubio came out and said, listen, you can either pay a toll or help us here, which means either Iran stays in control and you're going to be paying $2 million and your fuel price is going to go way, way up, or we open this up to the world because under international law, it is completely and utterly supposed to be open. And this is why Trump had to destroy the proxy army for the deep state players. And you have to remember, part of the proxy army, of course, is terrorists to keep control over the region. And the other nations around Iran, they know this. Why do you think they want Iran decimated? They know exactly what Iran has been doing. They know exactly what was going on there. And you can see now Trump is giving them an ultimatum. And he wants them to make a decision. Now, most likely they are not going to make a decision. As you can see, they've been giving speeches. They're telling the people that it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to buckle down and, we're going to have to try to weather all this, which means they're going to try to keep on track with their agenda, which means their economies are going to really start to hurt and the people are going to get very, very angry. And they're going to tell the people to sacrifice every step of the way. How long do you think this will last until the people of the country say enough is enough? I don't think it's going to take that long because already they told us there was no energy crisis or anything. And now they're saying, yeah, there's an energy crisis. Fuel's way too high. Inflation's going up. It's a complete and utter disaster in all of these areas. So right now, Trump is putting the screws to them. And you could see that he is actually going after the true enemy in all of this. And China, they're the loser at all of this. Because once this is open, once it's open to the world and they're following international law, there's no country that's going to control it. It's going to be completely open for everyone, which means the oil prices are going to drop like we've never seen before. And this is something they don't want because they've been in control of this for a very long time. You have to remember their agenda. Their agenda is to increase oil prices. Their agenda is to shift everything to China. And in order to do this, who has to get really cheap oil? China does. And to usher in windmills and solar panels, you need to control the oil prices. You need to creep up a little bit. But Trump, he accelerated all of this, and now they're really feeling the pain. They didn't want this to happen this quickly. They didn't want the oil prices to shoot up because it would destroy their economic system, and the people would blame them. They wanted to do this very, very slowly. Just like when Biden was in the United States, when he was in the White House, he introduced the Inflation Reduction Act, and what happened? It drove the oil prices and the gas prices up way too quickly. So he had to use the reserves to lower them a little bit because it was getting out of whack. They don't want that to happen. They like to do it slowly, methodically over time to convince you that this is what needs to be done. Look, it's going to keep going up or running out of oil or whatever excuse they're going to use. This is what they were trying to do. And this is why they had to manage it during Biden/Obama's term. And you can see Trump now, he's basically taken the finger out of the dam and he's saying, okay, let's do what you want to do. Let oil prices rise. You stick with this and let's see how long you last. And Trump now is fighting these individuals. And like we said before, the allies are not really allied to we, the people, and to President Trump. The allies are in line with the deep state players who are controlling this country. And this is why they push back on everything that Trump is trying to do, because, again, they're not truly our allies. Yes, maybe the people of those countries, but not the installed puppets. They are not our allies, the people that are running the countries right now. And, of course, they're taking orders from other people. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that we could see that Trump now, he is making moves and counter moves with elections because he understands what the deep state players are trying to do. He understands every step of the way. He has to put many different levels of protection in to make sure that the elections are as secure as possible, because he knows what the deep state players are going to try to do. They're going to try to basically convince everyone that Trump cheated in the election. And then they're going to use lawsuits, lawfare, and everything else to try to delay everything, because that's really what they do. They delay almost everything. All the judges coming out saying, hey, you have to bring back the illegals, or you have to bring back all the people in the different agencies. You have to release these people from prison or whatever. This is all delay tactics. They know in the end they don't have the rule of law on their side, but they can use it to continually delay. And if you notice, the same judges keep going over and over and over trying to push their agenda, and they're continually overturned because, remember, their mission is to delay only. That's it. They know they can't win, and they want to delay until the midterms because this is when everything starts to get kicked off. And at this point, you can see every step of the way, what is Trump doing? He's making sure that we have certain things into place to counter everything the deep state players are going to try to do during the elections this time around. Now, once again, you can see that the deep state players, every time Trump does something, they panic like we've never seen before, because every single time he wins and they can't stop him, and they know it. So basically, he's basically putting them in a very tough position where they won't be able to win these elections whatsoever. Now, I think they know this at this point. They are going to try to cheat as best they possibly can. But again, when all else fails, I think Nancy Pelosi pretty much sums it up in what they're going to do here. And this is why we have the No Kings protests that are going on, to actually try to brainwash the people into thinking that Trump is a king because he tried to cheat in the election, which he never did. They're going to use their systems of cheating to convince people that he's cheating. But actually, it's not going to work in their favor, because they're going to prove exactly what Trump has been trying to prove all along, that we shouldn't be using these machines, that we should be using paper ballots. It should be one-day voting. We should use voter ID. So in the end, when all is said and done, they're actually going to make the case. Yes, we might go through protests. We might go through riots. We might go through lawsuits, because remember, we're in a war. That war has not ended. The war is with the deep state players, not just in this country, but across the world. And you can see Trump is fighting the war around the world. And they'll keep fighting to the very, very end. We'll be talking a lot more about Iran. We'll be talking a lot more about the elections. But first, let's talk about what Trump is talking about out in California, because we could see that once again, the deep state players, the politicians out in California, they really don't want people to rebuild, especially the insurance companies. They're all going along with the deep state players. And Trump is now calling them out on all of it. This is what he put out on Truth. I've just met with the various political representatives of the tragedy that took place in California concerning the burning of thousands of once beautiful homes. It was brought to my attention that the insurance companies, in particular State Farm, have been absolutely horrible to people that have been paying them large premiums for years, only to find that when tragedy struck, these horrendous companies were not there to help. I asked the administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin, to give me a list of the companies who acted swiftly, courageously, and bravely in order to make their clients happy, and even more importantly, in order to fill their legal obligation. Likewise, I've asked to see those companies that were particularly bad. The names of some surprised me, but in the world in which we live, nothing really surprises me. State Farm and others should get their act together and treat people fairly. The government is looking into this matter as we speak. President DJT. And you have to ask a simple question. Why aren't these insurance companies, why aren't they doing what they're supposed to be doing? They have a legal obligation. Are there certain individuals within State Farm? Are they in line with Newscomb and others where they're saying, listen, let's slow this down. Let's slow walk this. Don't give the people the money to rebuild. Because again, we do not want these houses here. We want to build what we want to build, prepare the state for something very, very different, like the Green New Scam, the Great Reset. I do believe that's most likely what they're going to start to find out. And we're going to see that this is why they've been slow walking everything. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting, because you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the 15-minute cities. They're trying to house a lot of people in one location. This is what they're really trying to do, because again, this is part of their agenda from the very, very beginning. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that Pam Bondi, she gutted the DOJ program that helps illegal migrants fight deportation cases. And this is very, very interesting. Because if you go back a little bit in time, you could see that this was created back in the 50s. This was part of the Justice Department's Department Executive Office for Immigration Review, which was founded in the 50s and was designed to hand federal funding to a large number of nonprofit organizations, including Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services, to provide qualified legal representation for low-income immigrants. And now we could see that Pam Bondi is saying, listen, we just don't have the people for this. So as of right now, we cannot staff this. The DOJ says the program has not been eliminated because it is established by regulation. However, the office has basically ceased being able to fulfill its charge since its attorneys were reassigned. So basically, you could see that the DOJ is not going to be helping the illegals right now. And this is very, very interesting. Can they just remove it? No, because there are certain regulations that apply. But can you reassign the attorneys someplace else so this way it doesn't assist the illegals that have been coming into this country? It seems like they set this up a long time ago, maybe for another reason, but they use this to help all the illegals that they've been bringing in. And now Pam Bondi has basically reassigned the attorneys. So this way, she didn't interfere with the regulation. They just don't have anyone to staff it. Actually, sounds like a pretty good move to me. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's really interesting, and we mentioned this a couple days ago, or maybe a week ago, about how the FBI issued a flash notice identifying 18 popular router models targeted in a large malware operation. And yes, there's a lot of routers like D-Link, Netgear, TP-Link, Zyxel, and many others where criminals or those people that might want to use these routers to actually use them as an attack launch pad, these routers, they're basically compromised right now. So criminals can use them. And this is what usually happens. When the deep state players, they set everything up to be used for an event, like maybe a cyber attack, and it looks like it's coming from all the homes and things like that. So this way they can hide what they're doing and say, hey, look, we don't know how this happened. It came from all the homes, and they trace it back and they say it's from China or whatever they're going to try to say. Criminals then figure it out and they start using it for certain criminal activity. And we've seen this before. But Hedgie put this out and said, the FBI issued a flash notice identifying 18 popular router models targeted in a large malware operation. Affected models include routers from D-Link, Netgear, TP-Link, and Zyxel. Attackers exploited known vulnerabilities to install malware called Avricon, turning compromised devices into residential proxies, essentially renting out access to your home network to criminals who use it to hide their identity online. The FBI estimates access to around 369,000 devices has been sold since 2020 across more than 160 countries. My take, the detail worth understanding here, is what a residential proxy actually means for the people whose routers were compromised. Criminals pay for access to these devices specifically because traffic routed through a home router looks like a regular person browsing the internet rather than a server in a data center. Your router becomes a cover for someone else's fraud, cyber attacks, or worse, and you have no idea it's happening because your internet still works fine. The FBI noted patches were already available for some of the vulnerabilities that were exploited. If your router is on the list, check the manufacturer's site for a firmware update. If it's old enough to no longer receive security patches, it's worth replacing regardless of whether it appears here specifically. And I do believe they were going to try to use this to launch a major, major cyber attack on this country. And the FBI right now is mitigating all this. And yes, when you have these vulnerabilities, when you have access like this, yes, criminals, they figure it out. They use it for their own benefit. And this always happens every single time. And we could see that the FBI, they have caught this, and I'm sure there's other things that are out there because, once again, the deep state players, they've been planning this for a very long time. And you can see that every step of the way, Trump now is, and his administration, they are trying to protect this country from what they might try to do. And I do believe in the end, when all else fails, when they, of course, can't win the midterms, when the riots don't work, I think eventually what they'll try to do is try to bring us to World War III. And if you look at what Trump is doing across the globe, he is now mitigating all this, trying to basically bring the deep state players down a path where it is controllable when they try to use a false flag to try to bring us into World War III. We don't have to worry about Iran. We don't have to worry about Venezuela. We don't have to worry about Cuba. We don't have to worry about all these different hot spots. And he can concentrate on the one area. And I do believe this is most likely what he's doing right now. And yes, there's many other agendas associated with this, not just this, like, removing the leverage from China, actually calling out the allies, resetting the economic system across the globe, decentralizing everything. But again, all of this is connected one way or another. And think about all the gun control crazy people out there when they keep saying, oh, we need more laws, we need more laws. Well, think about it. Why do criminals always have the weapons? And why is it that they can get it so easily? Well, all you got to do is look at California. They have very, very stringent gun laws. But felons, they can buy guns. Amuse put this out and says, Los Angeles County failed to report felony convictions to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System from the 80s through the 2020s. The gap allowed convicted felons to pass federal gun purchase checks nationwide. Democrat banned the box laws in California, Colorado, Illinois shield felons from employers while the system shields them from background checks. So basically, they didn't report any of this, which means the criminals were able to get the guns no problem whatsoever. So when they talk about more and more gun laws, what are they really doing here? Because in the background, if you're doing this, you're allowing the criminals to get the weapons they need, and you're keeping the American people from getting the weapons that they actually need. That should tell you everything you need to know. Who's always paying the price? The American people, because in the end, they wanted the illegals. They wanted Antifa. They wanted the criminals to have the leverage. They didn't want the American people to have the leverage. I mean, all you got to do is look at the UK, look at France, look at Australia, look at New Zealand, look at all those countries. When you look at those countries, do the people really have the leverage out there? If the government, the tyrannical government, really wanted to control them, which they are, they're arresting them for using wrong pronouns. They're using them where people actually talk about their government. Think about it. It's easy for them to go in and arrest them. What are people going to do? Use their pitchforks, their knives to try to stop them? It'll be very, very difficult. And this is why they want to control over the people of this country. Because again, without the people defending themselves, tyrannical governments can control you. And I think we're starting to see this very, very clearly across Europe and in Australia and many other places. But look what's happening in this country with the ATF. The Biden-era pistol brace rule, which reclassified millions of braced pistols as short barrel rifles under the National Firearms Act, was vacated by federal courts and deemed unlawful. But it seems that the rogue ATF, they're still continuing pushing this type of law, and they're still saying that it is illegal. So once again, a rule is not a law, number one. There's also a Supreme Court ruling, and this is why the ATF should be basically maybe dismantled and restructured or removed completely. Because again, they should not be making rules on the weapons that we use in this country. Because again, the Second Amendment is very, very clear. And if you're going to make rules, which are not even laws, this goes against the Constitution completely. Can you imagine if you had and I think they were trying to do this under the Biden administration, an organization or an agency that controlled and monitored speech? Weren't they trying to do this? And they said, okay, here are the new rules for speech. These are the words that you can use. And if you use these words, you violated our rules and we can arrest you. And they kept doing it. I mean, this goes against the First Amendment. Would everyone scream and yell and say, this is not allowed? Why isn't everyone screaming and yelling about the Second Amendment? What's the difference here? There is no difference whatsoever. Actually, there is a difference. If you look at the Second Amendment, it says shall not infringe. The First Amendment doesn't even say that. So basically, right there, that shows you everything you need to know. And you can see we need to go into the ATF right now and see what's really going on, because I do believe we have a lot of rogue ATF people within there trying to push this. But Eric Burleson put this out and said, a federal court struck down the ATF's pistol brace rule. The DOJ dropped its appeal, and now the ATF admits it's still enforcing that same interpretation against law-abiding gun owners. Up to 10 years in prison for a rule the courts already killed. This is exactly why I introduced the Abolish the ATF Act. This agency is completely and utterly out of control, and it has been for a very long time because these agencies were created to actually go after law-abiding citizens with weapons. And this is why they were allowed to make rules and use them against you to say, hey, you broke our rule. So basically, now you could be arrested. But it's not a law. Congress didn't come up with a law. They were allowed to interpret the law the way they saw fit. This should not be allowed whatsoever. And we could see at this point in time, I do believe this is eventually all going to be shut down as time goes on. And again, the Supreme Court already ruled, and we do have the Second Amendment. But let's see how this all plays out as we move forward. Now, the other thing that we could see, since Trump now has freed Venezuela, the State Department has now reopened the embassy in Venezuela following Maduro's capture. And the people of Venezuela, they're experiencing a very different lifestyle right now. Department of State put this out and said, you're seeing civil life come back to life in Venezuela, Rubio says. Independent media is now allowing to operate. Political prisoners have been released. Political parties are forming again. People are speaking and participating in public life. Everything now has changed. Plus, Trump has removed the cheap oil to China. They are not getting that cheap oil anymore, which is very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and this is coming out of the CBC, they're letting us know that North Korea is now expanding its nuclear arsenal after witnessing Iran's vulnerabilities. So we have to remember, going back a little bit in time, we know that they planned for Iran and North Korea specifically to actually kick off World War III. Trump now, in his first term, basically destroyed North Korea's nuclear capabilities. He wrote letters to Kim Jong-un. He went down to North Korea, walked across the DMZ. So I do believe he has a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un and actually set him free because China controlled North Korea. And I do believe that the deep state players, they're going to try to use North Korea to probably kick something off. And most likely this is one of the reasons why this story came out, just like the story about a revolution in Russia. So when you read this, it says, ever since becoming leader in 2011, Kim has made his nuclear weapons program a national goal, almost a doctrine, arguing is the only way for small powers to keep from being mercilessly violated by superpowers. The current Mideast war has now told North Korea's parliament that the true guarantee of a state's existence is nuclear deterrent, and he vowed to expand it. So, once again, we know from the very beginning, Trump basically destroyed their nuclear facilities. Yes, they've been shooting off missiles. Yes, they supplied missiles to Iran. But we have to remember that the uranium that Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the rest were involved with, that shipped to Russia, then shipped to Iran, Syria, shipped to North Korea, they were planning to use this to get us into World War III. So it looks like they're trying to build this up again with North Korea. Look what happened to Iran. Now North Korea is doing the same exact thing. But I do believe Trump has a relationship with Kim Jong-un, and this is going to be very, very different than what they believe is going to happen. Because I do believe during his first term, he set everything in motion to make sure that Kim Jong-un was working with him. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is out in Iran, the U.S. decided to strike the former U.S. embassy in Tehran. And Mary Nafal says why this was done. It was done because the IRGC had turned it into a base packed with Basij fighters. And now the members inside are pretty much all dead. So they took care of that. That's why they destroyed the former embassy there. But when we start to look at what Trump is doing now with Iran, and I do believe Iran was the deep state players' proxy army, Trump has now removed the proxy army because, again, he couldn't go directly at the allies, who are not really our allies. He had to actually take a detour, remove their leverage, their proxy army. And yes, you had to destroy all their missiles that they put into place because, again, they assisted Iran. Remove their missiles, remove their planes, remove their boats, remove their drones, remove whatever they had there to scare the people of the world. And remember, if Iran did get a nuclear weapon, it would make it a lot more difficult to free the Strait of Hormuz because the Strait of Hormuz was being held captive, not just by Iran. That was the proxy army. That was the country that they used for leverage, but it was being held hostage by the deep state players, by the EU, by the UK. Trump now is setting it free. So we got to go back a little bit in time because think about Greenland, for example. And remember what Trump said, that we can't trust NATO in a war? Well, Trump has been proven right. The allies didn't come to our assistance. He just proved to the world that he was right. John Conrad put this out and said, Trump said we need Greenland because we can't trust NATO to let us use it in a war. He said we need a battleship 100 times more powerful to keep straits open. Europe laughed. Trump was right. Because again, who is Trump truly fighting? So it seems that the Australia Prime Minister, Starmer, they all made speeches. Disclosed TV put this out and said, Australia Prime Minister says the economic shocks caused by this war will be with us for months. The months ahead may not be easy. That's the key phrase, may not be easy. I want to be upfront about that and promise to do everything to protect Australia from the worst of it in these uncertain times. The Last Refuge responded to this and said 72 hours ago, the same government was saying there was no petrol or energy crisis. I'm serious. Absolutely. Starmer came out and said, I'm not going to choose because I think it is in our interest to have a strong relationship with the U.S. and with Europe. But I do think that when it comes to defense and security, energy, emissions, and the economy, we need stronger relationships with Europe. So think about, number one, what Trump is doing. Trump has removed their proxy army. He is now putting them on notice, showing the world that NATO is dead. The ally system never really existed. Now each country has to say, okay, we're going to protect our own country. Even within the European system, eventually each country is going to have to protect their own country. What is Trump doing? He's removing the centralization. He's making them see that you cannot work together like this and depend on everyone else. Each country must be sovereign. And now he's forcing these puppets to actually do this. Now, are they going to do it right off the bat? Absolutely not. But eventually, that is definitely what's going to happen. And think about it. They're going to try to stay together as long as they possibly can. The UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he gave a national address saying that things will never be the same again. And they won't, because Trump is changing everything. So the United Kingdom, he said, must find a way to reunite with the European Union. Because if it remains alone without key support and protection from the USA, the British Empire is at risk of collapse. So basically the whole Brexit thing, I guess, the Brexit independence from European Union is now a threat. And look, instead of NATO, they're now looking at the European Union. So Trump has removed the NATO card because now everyone can see that the allies are not together. Now Europe is sticking together or trying to say, okay, these are our friends now. We'll stay together. Soon, I do believe that the EU is going to break apart in the end. And Starmer says, it is now clear that the impact of this war will affect the future of our country and that the military planners will meet to discuss how to make Hormuz Strait accessible and safe after the war. I do have to level with people. This will not be easy. Oh, wait, there's those words again. So let me see. We have Australia saying this will not be easy. We have Starmer saying that this will not be easy. The rest of the leaders are saying that this will not be easy. So once again, did they get talking points? Sounds like the script was pushed out and everyone is saying that this will not be easy. I guess it's the 4 a.m. talking points. It's starting to seem that way. Did you know a popular looks-maxing streamer said Gavin Newsom would beat J.D. Vance in the 2020 election because Vance was overweight and Gavin is better looking? Then Vance showed up to a recent interview looking completely transformed. Just weeks after the comment, everyone's pointing to GLP-1 type of drug, the same type of weight loss drug that 31 million Americans are on. But here's the thing. You don't need a prescription or a needle to get those results. This is why I'm obsessed with the particular GLP-1 supplement instead of a pharmaceutical override. It uses plant-based clinical studied ingredients like metabolate to help my body naturally boost its own hunger controlling signals. I get the same fullness and fewer cravings without the prescriptions, needles, or the growing list of side effects making headlines. It supports my weight management while protecting my metabolism so I can keep the results for good. To kick off spring, get 51% off only at trimwithx22.com. Every order comes with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free express shipping with subscriptions. Once again, that is trimwithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. So it looks like Britain this week will hold a meeting of about 35 countries to discuss how to reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Netherlands are among those to have signed it. So remember, they're the ones who are dependent on this oil. And think about it. Why is this a very big decision? Because again, what direction were they heading in? They were heading down the Green New Scam. They were heading down the Great Reset. So remember, they were telling everyone we're going to have reliable, renewable energy. Germany tried to do it. The UK was moving in that direction. Australia's moving in that direction. And now they're trapped in all of this. So they have to make a decision. Which way are they going to go with this? Carrie Kellerman put this out and said, they replaced reliable energy with ideology, and now they're out of options. This is the most predictable energy catastrophe since the 70s oil embargo, except this time Europe did it to themselves. And that's absolutely true. Harold Finch says, if it's a one-way street, it's a no-way street, and we will simply walk away. Good luck, Europe. We know you can't afford to rearm. Your economies are barely keeping afloat as is. Now with the energy prices exploding because you refuse to help, you're in serious trouble. Was cutting off your nose to spite your face worth it? What happens when Europe has a real security threat and the United States decides it's not our war? Europe is going to find out. The United States spent over $900 billion on NATO last year on top of our own defense budget. How does Europe think it's going to make up a nearly $1 trillion shortfall? And how does Europe think it's going to replace the combat power on display in the Persian Gulf right now? This is the breaking point. This is the one time too many. When war hawks like Lindsey Graham are saying it's time to leave NATO, then Europe has erred so badly that there isn't anyone of real consequence to stop the United States from the splitting from NATO. Do we need to officially leave the treaty? No, Congress can't do anything to stop us walking away if they wanted to. And this has shattered those who would have fought withdrawal. All that is needed is for the Department of War and President to sequester and not spend the NATO funding or spend it on U.S. military programs like the Sentinel ICBM B-21 Raider, shipbuilding, hypersonic missiles, F-35s, and F-15s, and to refuse to participate in any NATO exercise or calls for help. That's what the situation is now, created by Europe and being made worse daily by Europe. Now, think about what Marco Rubio says. Now, he's told us that Iran is going to be creating a toll booth. Now, we've known about this from John Conrad because he had a theory about all this. It looks like the theory is proving to be absolutely right. This whole thing is about basically the Strait of Hormuz. This is about the oil there. This is about control. And basically what Trump did, he fought the deep state, the EU's proxy army, destroyed the proxy army that actually protected this area for them. And now it is completely wide open and they have to make a decision about it. So Marco Rubio came out and first said, listen, you can either have a toll booth where you're going to be charged $2 million to go in and out because Iran's going to be controlling it, or you can take control over it all, meaning the world, the international society can take control over this area. And think about what Rubio just said right now. Eric Doherty put this out and said, anything Iran does to impede commercial traffic is illegal. For all those countries that love to talk about international law, it is a violation of international maritime law to impede the free flow of travel in international waters, okay? It's illegal to bomb and hit and attack commercial shipping and sink them. I mean, that's what the Nazis did during World War II in the Atlantic. And that's what they're doing now to ships that they, from countries they don't like, that are, or flagged by countries they don't like. These are terroristic acts that they're undertaking. And so the United States gets very little energy through the Strait of Hormuz. Our ally ships out a lot of oil through there, meaning our Gulf allies. This is a problem for the world. It's countries around the world should be stepping up and dealing with that and saying that's intolerable. And that's what we've encouraged them to do. Now, think about what he just said here. International law, nobody controls this area. But for how many years has it been controlled by the proxy army of the deep state players? Over 40? Was this set into place on purpose, going all the way back in time? Because remember, we came off the gold standard in 1971. It seems like they were setting everything up to centralize the control of oil around the globe. John Conrad says, spent all day in D.C. talking to Navy and military sources. My Hormuz hypothesis stands. The Navy appears to be in no rush to reopen the strait. The question remains, what is the administration trying to leverage? Nobody I talk to is even willing to discuss that until European politicians and media stop calling Americans war criminals and monsters. And guess what? Even most liberals I talk to are getting tired of it. The only people pleased with the anti-American rhetoric vomiting out of Europe are the left, far left, and a large segment of PhDs in academia and think tanks. I have no idea when the strait will reopen. But if the price is a modicum of cooperation and respect for everything America has done for decades to keep Europe safe, the strait could stay closed for months or turn into a toll booth for years because the majority of Americans and the vast majority of Trump administration officials I've talked with seem fed up with their arrogance. So let's think about this. So basically, he's letting us know the Navy is still in control, which I do believe. I think Trump has complete and utter control of the Strait of Hormuz. He's just putting pressure on the deep state players and on the EU. And he put this out on Truth. Iran's new regime president, much less radicalized and far more intelligent than his predecessors, has just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. We will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free and clear. Until then, we are blasting Iran into oblivion, or, as they say, back to the Stone Ages, President DJT. So what is Trump doing? He's saying, hey, listen, EU, deep state players, central bankers, we're going to destroy the rest of your proxy army. We know it's hard to make this decision, but we're waiting for you. He's not waiting for Iran. He's waiting for Starmer. He's waiting for Mertz. He's waiting for the EU. He's waiting for Australia. Is he really waiting for the puppets, or is he waiting for those people that are controlling the puppets? So Trump is telling them the strait is now open because we made it open. You benefit enormously from the oil flow. Help keep it that way or pay the consequences of higher energy prices. The Strait of Hormuz is not internal waters of any state. It is an international strait subject to the transit passage regime under customary international law. UN CLOS Article 38, which is the U.S. treaty, as binding even though it never ratified the treaty. Iran has repeatedly claimed the right to close or restrict it. The U.S. and every administration, Republican or Democrat, has always rejected that. What Trump is actually doing in this scenario is as follows. Identify a public good that the U.S. is subsidizing, which is oil. Demonstrate that the U.S. can unilaterally secure or deny it. Demand that the biggest beneficiaries, Europe, Japan, South Korea, etc., pay a fair share in cash, ships, sanctions, compliance, or political alignment. Trump is waiting for the EU to acknowledge reality and move from free riding to co-patron. He did the same with NATO Article 5 spending targets, publicly shaming Germany. He did it with South Korea and Japan on defense cost sharing. He did it with the JCPOA, the worst deal ever, maximum pressure until others either joined the pressure campaign or accepted U.S. terms. The EU, UK, and other nations have two rational choices. Option A, deploy ships, increase sanctions enforcement, pay for U.S. logistical support, and publicly back the U.S. legal interpretation of the strait. In return, they get stable, lower oil prices and reduce dependence on Russian or unstable Gulf suppliers. Option B, refuse, watch insurance rates and oil prices spike, suffer economic pain, and then either A, try to negotiate with a neutered Iran, pointless, or B, beg the U.S. to keep the strait open anyway while they do nothing. Trump is not waiting in suspense. He has already achieved the strategic win. Iran is disarmed. The strait is already secured. The ball is in Europe's court, and the clock is the global oil market. The longer they delay, the more the market prices in Europe is not serious about energy security. Trump is saying, we just did the heavy lifting again. Your move, help secure the commons or explain to your voters why gasoline is going up like this. Rubio's legal framing, no one should control it, is the diplomatic cover. The U.S. is not claiming ownership. It is preventing Iran from claiming it. When the EU, UK, and other nations work with Trump, Iran will magically open the strait, which means Trump will actually open the strait and will show that Iran can no longer claim the strait. It will be an international waterway. That is what he wants them to admit to. He wants them to say it is an international waterway. Nobody controls it. Everyone can use it. It's open for everyone. Because if they don't, well, they're going to have to pay a toll every time they go through. I wonder who's going to be collecting that toll. Do you really think it's going to be Iran? Most likely not. Actually, that money's probably going to come back to the U.S. somehow, some way. But you can see what Trump is doing. He's not really battling Iran. Iran was in the way. Just like when the deep state is coming after we the people, Trump is in the way. They really want us to suffer. The same thing here. Iran was just in the way. He had to take Iran out. The proxy army has been removed. Now their leverage is gone. China's leverage is gone. And yes, we have to bring China into this because, again, they were receiving the very, very cheap oil. So now we have the European nations. We have China. Remember, a lot of this was going to go to China because they were in line with them. And now they have to make a decision. What do we do in this scenario? Actually, Trump has boxed them in because now China is struggling. He shut him off in Venezuela. He shut him down in Iran. And now everyone can see that these individuals out in Europe and Australia and the rest, they didn't come to assist the United States. They're actually going against what is really happening here. And they rather, at this point in time, it might change, they rather feel the pain. And they're telling their people, buckle up. We don't know when this is going to end anytime soon. So it means, are they doing this for the long haul? Let's see how this all plays out. But again, Trump now, every time they don't make a decision or they make the wrong decision, what does Trump do? Just watch. He bombs Iran. More weapons. Soon, everything will be gone. He's letting them know this. He's letting the deep state players know this. He just wants to hear the words, we give. And yes, it's open to everyone. Yes, the international community will make sure that no nation controls it. Think about what he just did. Boom. And this is why they use the cover story of the nuclear weapons. Because, again, this is what the deep state players have been using for a very long time. So why not use their narrative to do what needs to be done? And once again, once this occurs, the fear tax is gone. The oil prices now will separate. And Trump now is basically dismantling everything the deep state, the central bankers have done from the very, very beginning. And think about it. When we came off the gold standard in 1971, what did they do? They established the petrodollar system. They got control of the Strait of Hormuz. They controlled it with Iran. They controlled the sale of oil in every one of the Middle Eastern countries. Trump now has shut all that down. This is one of the last things that they have in this region. And now he's shutting this down. Who's winning? Trump is winning. Who's losing? Well, it looks like Swalwell is losing big time. And you could see that he is panicking like we've never seen before. But what's very interesting, and May's put this out, if we go back a little bit in time, there was a video where he was being interviewed on CNN. And 2023, Swalwell says not to take his word that he didn't do anything wrong with the Chinese spy, but instead take the FBI's word for it. Hey, Swalwell, if the FBI doesn't have anything, why are you fighting to stop them from releasing it? So basically, think about what he just said here. Back in 2023, he had protection. The FBI was never going to release anything. Now he doesn't have that protection anymore. That's why he's panicking, which means the FBI has everything. And I do believe with everything that we're seeing now, we're seeing Trump dismantle everything the deep state players or expose everything the deep state players have been doing. And you are now seeing the money system being exposed. We have J.D. Vance and others now exposing the fraud every step of the way. And people are going to start to understand that the criminal syndicate was set up in such a way where it made it very, very difficult to understand what they were doing and who was actually getting the money. And now, as they go deeper and deeper and deeper into this, they're going to find out how the money flowed to every single state, every single city, every single town, and what group of people. And it's all going to be shut down. But I think Colonel Towner Watkins pretty much explains how the fraud runs. Hypothetically, if someone off the street comes up to you and says, I want to commit murder, traffic drugs, and buy a military to do that so I can steal everyone's shit, but I need you to pay for it, what would you say? No. He then says, you have to, or I will kidnap you and throw you in a cell where others will do all sorts of horrendous things to you. He says, the protection will cost you 25% of everything you earn for the rest of your life. The deal is that if you pay it, he will protect you and your family from all the chaos they're about to release. You really don't have a choice because a few of your neighbors have been very publicly kidnapped and never heard from again. So you pay the protection. But after a few months, you have a niece that overdoses on the drugs they were supposed to keep away from those protected people. You have a brother shot in a robbery and killed. You look around and begin to realize you've been participating in the world's largest crime. While many of us believe this describes America today, let me add another aspect to it. Federal grants. The U.S. government is extorting or stealing your money via taxes. The mafia dons send their mafia lawyers to meet up and create edicts, federal laws. They publish the list of demands, use the money they extorted from you to pay another set of local mafia lawyers regionally, states. They call them block grants. When a state has to be paid money extorted from its citizens, laundered through the federal government to comply with federal law, you no longer have a republic. You have a crime scene. It's a racket. This is done on education, voting, criminal justice. It's constitutional suicide and was all constructed slowly on purpose to collapse our republic. Let that sink in. Today, it is possible for a state to opt out of all federal funding in education and do whatever they want to, but by doing so, they forfeit their citizens' extortion money taxes. Some states did this with OSHA and opted to have a state one. Several states opted out of enforcing federal immigration and honoring ICE retainers. They ignored federal law on issuing CDLs. And notice what happened. The threat to withhold your extorted taxes. The mafia that set this up banked on gradualism, and no one was noticing. The only answer I see is returning to the original Constitution and its intent, which was blown up in the early 1900s. And basically what happened? The Federal Reserve was formed during this period of time. So yes, we need to go back to the Constitution because they created a criminal syndicate going back in time. And basically, slowly but surely, methodically, they creeped into our system and they turned it into a republic, into a crime scene that you see today. They did it so slowly that no one would know it was going on. And now you can see the truth of the matter. Now, it seems that the DOJ and J.D. Vance and the rest, they're going to be tracking down all these fraudsters. They're going to be exposing it all. And the difficult part of this is going after those people that are using cryptocurrency. But it seems that this is not going to be that difficult because we could see that they have certain things in place. The debriefing 17 says, DOJ just charged 10 foreign nationals tied to crypto market makers accused of faking volume, pumping prices, and dumping on real buyers. And this wasn't reactive. The FBI ran undercover operations, created tokens, tracked the wash trading, and brought defendants back from Singapore. That tells you the game has changed. They're not just chasing hackers after the collapse anymore. They're building cases inside the rails, mapping the manipulation while it's happening, seize assets, and rolling the network up piece by piece. Timelines don't lie. First the dark web, then the exchanges, then the mixers, now the market-making layer itself. The crypto cleanup continues. Brian Cates says this is going to be the template for taking out the transnational crime syndicates' global central banking system as well. And that is absolutely true. Every step of the way, Trump has put his trusted people in place. And these trusted people right now are basically reversing everything the deep state that created these agencies to do, because, again, they were protection agencies. They weren't actually agencies that benefited the people that they went after actual criminals. Now you see everything has changed, and you're going to see more and more arrests as they happen. Remember, it's not just about going after Obama, going after Hillary. Yes, that's fantastic going after. But think about how many layers. Remember, a criminal syndicate system has layers. It's not just Obama and Hillary and nobody else. There's multiple layers of criminals that they use to move their agenda along. Yes, you have the foot soldiers on the bottom. Then you have those people in the agencies at the local level, and maybe even politicians that they brought in, judges, prosecutors at the lower level. You have the illegals that they brought in to launder the money. They are the front men and women. Then it goes above that, like into D.C., where they installed politicians, and it goes up and up and up. So basically, you can see there's many, many different layers to the criminal system. So it's not just about arresting a couple of people. It's arresting a lot of people. And we could see that all these people are involved in all of this. But what's very interesting is we could see that every step of the way, we see that the leftist judges, the deep state judges, they're trying to delay everything that Trump is trying to do. And that's what this is all about, delaying. They don't have the ability to shut it down or stop it because the rule of law is not on their side. They're using lawfare tactics to just try to delay things as long as possible, at least to the midterms. Eric Doherty put this out and said, in a psychotic decision, leftist judge Allison Burroughs just rules Trump must restore 900,000 migrants legal status who were told to leave through the CBP app, home app. So think about what she just did here. Now, we know that this is going to be appealed. Awaken Outlaw says, of all the outrageous decisions handed down today from woke, compromised district judges, this one takes the cake. The Trump admin is 1,000% going to appeal this to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And that's important because just 6 months ago, they overruled, and the SCOTUS quickly upheld one of the district's judges' decision in the case, Svetlana Doe versus Noem. In that case, it was the CHNV parole program Biden-era grants he doled out like a candy to hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens. Not only is the precedent fresh, but it's going before the same judges with essentially the same case. I'm not a betting man, but I really need to consider leveraging some of these sure things into folding money on those prediction apps. It's almost not even fair at this point. And it's absolutely true. And again, this is about delaying. Delay. Now, just yesterday, it turns out that Kristi Noem's husband, it looks like he got himself into a little bit of trouble. And his name is Byron Noem. Karma Patriot put this out. And it looks like he confirmed the story. And most likely, Kristi Noem confirmed the story. And basically, I guess he likes to dress up in women's clothing. He pays for this. So it seems that this was hidden for a long time. Now it has come out. And it's very interesting, the timing that Trump decided, okay, we need to change up in DHS. Again, it seems like he was trying to get ahead of the story. And Karma Patriot says, I don't think it reflects poorly on Noem or Trump. However, it does show us how this man's preferred secrets could have easily been used as blackmail to possibly manipulate Noem's decision as DHS secretary and pose a threat to our national security. Playbook known, crisis averted. When Daily Mail reached Byron by telephone, he did not deny having explicit conversations or sharing photos of himself dressed as a woman. It was also put to him that he had made indiscreet comments about his wife and could have endangered national security by exposing her to the threat of blackmail. Yeah, I made no comments like that. That would lead to that, Byron replied. I deny the second part of that. So basically, Trump looks like he moved her out, decided to give her the Americas, which is actually another important job because, again, she's going to be handling all the deportations. She's going to be handling getting rid of the cartels in all the different countries, and decided to put in someone else to get ahead of all of this. So can this be used to blackmail Noem? I do believe this is what they were going to probably try to do. No. And remember, this is not Kristi Noem doing this. This is her husband. And again, you don't control people. You don't know what your spouse is doing. Just like if somebody had someone cheat on them and you didn't know about it, is no reflection on the person because each person is their own person and they make their own decisions. So once again, I do believe that she's still doing a great job. Trump moved her specifically to basically get ahead of this story and to shut it all down. And it looks like it worked. So this way, they couldn't blackmail Noam with DHS because Noam is no longer there, which is very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that's really interesting, it looks like they're really trying to stop Trump from building the ballroom, or are they really trying to stop Trump from building what he's building under the ballroom and actually what he's dismantling in the process? Because think about what they're doing right now. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He says, in the ballroom case, the judge says we have to get congressional approval. He is wrong. Congressional approval has never been given on anything in these circumstances, big or small, having to do with construction of the White House. In this case, even less so, because the ballroom is being built with private donations, no federal tax money. President DJT, and he's absolutely correct. So again, all they're trying to do is delay. They don't want him to destroy what they put into place under that part of the East Wing. I guess they never expected this to happen, did they? They're not really concerned about the ballroom. They're concerned about what's underneath the ballroom. And this might be their system where they use to spy on everyone in the White House. I wouldn't put it past them because remember, Obama came in and updated the electrical, updated the air conditioning and everything else down below. So what else could they have done? Think about that for a second. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and I think the rest of the country is going to follow in what DeSantis is doing in Florida, and just like what Bukele did in El Salvador. Governor Ron DeSantis is moving to get a radical leftist judge impeached after she released a known predator who went to kill an innocent 5-year-old girl. So this is what should happen. When we control the House and the Senate, we should move forward with impeaching all the judges, all these judges that have been going after Trump, all these judges that aren't following the rule of law, all these activist judges, they need to be removed. And I do believe once we most likely see the House and the Senate turn completely and utterly Republican, and I don't mean rhino, I mean patriots, I do believe you're going to see a lot of these judges eventually resign. I don't mean the next day, because again, you have to remember, they're going to try to fight this every step of the way. They're going to try to make it seem like the king, I'm holding up quotes here, cheated in the elections. But again, it was the D's once again manipulating the elections because those machines can be manipulated. It's going to prove Trump's case in the end. Thank you, D's. And basically, you're going to see as time goes on, they're going to eventually resign themselves. There'll be probably very few impeachments that are going to happen. But let's see how this plays out. I think most of the judges would rather resign and say, hey, wait, I retire, than get impeached from the bench. Think about that for a second. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the Federal Appeals Court has blocked a judge who ordered Trump to reverse Kari Lake's mass federal layoffs at the U.S. Agency for Global Media and Voice for America. They now do not have to rehire mass amounts of staff. This seems like very good news and not really surprising that it was reversed. Now, it doesn't mean the deep state players aren't going to try to push it again. But again, we could see everything that they're trying to do is a delay tactic. And every step of the way, it's not working. Now, what's very interesting is we know that the Birthright citizenship right now, it is going on with the Supreme Court. And there was a chair for Trump, and he actually attended the Supreme Court hearings. Harmeet Dillon put this out and said, there's literally a chair set up at SCOTUS for our president to sit in for oral arguments. Your separation of powers nonsense is more intimidation. Pro-clutching Hatter. Tony Sarugos responded to Harmeet Dillon and says, Democrats are clueless. Separation of power doesn't mean elected officials must hide in the attic while the judiciary does its work. Washington sat in Congress. Lincoln walked into the courtrooms. FDR consulted with justice over war powers. Presence is not interference. Absolutely true. So once again, they're trying to make a really big deal out of this, but it's completely and utterly falling apart. But during the oral arguments, it looks like Ketanji Brown Jackson decided to use an example about birthright citizenship, and it completely and utterly fell apart. During oral arguments in the landmark case tied to President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship, Jackson attempted to redefine the concept of allegiance under the 14th Amendment using a hypothetical crime committed abroad. The exchange occurred during a discussion on the 14th Amendment and the definition of being subject to jurisdiction of the United States. In the warped world of the radical left, being subject to criminal prosecution is now the same thing as the allegiance required for birthright citizenship. Jackson laid out a convoluted hypothetical involving a trip to Japan. Her argument? If she steals a wallet in Tokyo and gets arrested, she is suddenly owing allegiance to the Japanese sovereign. If the mere ability of a state to prosecute a crime constitutes allegiance, then the word has lost all meaning. Allegiance is a bond of loyalty to a nation. It is the commitment to defend its laws and its borders. It is not, as Jackson suggests, a relationship formed when a pickpocket gets caught in Tokyo subway or here in America. Absolutely true. And you can see every step of the way, the left and the corrupt Supreme Court justices, they tried to make an argument, but every single time they kept losing. Gunther Eagleman put this out and said, Justice Kagan tried to pin Solicitor General into a corner during arguments over birthright citizenship, suggesting the challenger's position relied on some esoteric theory rather than plain text. Sauer dismantled that by going straight to the source. The men who actually wrote the 14th Amendment and its predecessor, Civil Rights Act, defined jurisdiction as required complete allegiance to the United States, not foreign powers. Temporary visitors, diplomats, and those not domiciled with fully loyalty were never intended to pass on automatic citizenship to their children born here. This wasn't some fringe idea cooked up later. It was the consistent understanding for decades, backed by congressional debates, treaties, and early cases. Modern claims of universal birthright citizenship for everyone physically present ignore what the framers actually said. Time to restore the real 14th Amendment. Absolutely. And then SCOTUS Justice Samuel Alito says it perfectly on birthright citizenship. Eric Doherty put this out. He suggests that just because illegal aliens were not a problem at the time the 14th Amendment was adopted does not mean they shouldn't be addressed today. Nailed it. Justice Scalia had an example that dealt with this situation. He imagined an old theft statute that was enacted well before anybody conceived of a microwave oven. And then afterwards, someone is charged with the crime of stealing a microwave oven. And his fellow says, well, I can't be convicted under this because the microwave oven didn't exist at the time. And he dismissed that. There's a general rule there. And you apply it to future applications. And what we're dealing with here is something that was basically unknown at the time when the 14th Amendment was adopted, which is illegal immigration. So how do we deal with the situation when we have a general rule? John Sauer, yeah, I strongly agree with the way that you frame that there is a general principle, that's a broad principle that's adopted in the phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and we submit that our theory of allegiance and domicile-based allegiance is what explains those specific exemptions that everybody was aware of. But it is broad enough to sweep in future situations. And as you pointed out, illegal immigration did not exist then. You can always count on Alito. Absolutely. And you can see every step of the way, the actual justices, the ones that are following the rule of law and following history, they're making a case for birthright citizenship. And we have Clarence Thomas. He pretty much shut it all down because he says, what does that mean? Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And he says it means not owing allegiance to anybody else. That is what it means. Illegal aliens owe allegiance to their country of birth, not America. Open and shut. So basically, you could see that they are now showing everyone that this is what birthright citizenship really means. It doesn't mean the case is all said and done and we won. It means they're making the argument and people now are seeing this. Now, again, we have a lot of corrupt judges here. We have a lot of activist judges here that do not want this to happen. They don't want birthright citizenship to be shut down the way it is today. And they're going to fight this every step of the way. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, birthright citizenship has to do with the babies of slaves, not Chinese billionaires who have 56 kids, all of whom become American citizens. One of the many great scams of our time, President DJT. He's absolutely right. And we can see every step of the way, the argument is being made, and the people of this country are seeing it. Now, if the Supreme Court justices go back in time, there is precedent. The individual who created the 14th Amendment explains it very well, and it's being repeated over and over and over. But we'll have to see how this all plays out. Now, the other thing that we could see is it looks like Trump has found a way to go around the Congress to actually fully fund DHS. This is what Trump put out. Republicans fully support our great men and women of law enforcement. Maybe the word should be love. America thanks each and every one of our wonderful police, border patrol, ICE, and others for their work to protect our cities, towns, streets, and indeed our country itself. Unlike Republicans, Democrats want to defund the police, border patrol, and all immigration enforcement. They want to allow criminals, the mentally insane, and lunatics from all over the world to come into our country, totally unvetted and unchecked, putting Americans in serious danger. That's why we're going forward to fund our incredible ICE agents and Border Patrol through a process that doesn't need radical left Democrat votes and bypasses the Senate filibuster, which should be repealed immediately. Working in close conjunction with the House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Leader John Thune, we're going to work as fast and as focused as possible to replenish funding for our border and ICE agents, and the radical left Democrats won't be able to stop us. We will not allow them to hurt families of these great patriots by defunding them. I'm asking that the bill be on my desk no later than June 1st. Our law enforcement officers and the American people should not have to wait until the Democrats see reason or learn the hard way through the polls. Hopefully, everyone will be voting Republican for the midterms. Through simple unification, Republicans can do this without the Democrats. In the meantime, we will continue to use funding from the great, big, beautiful bill, which is giving record tax rebates to citizens all over the country to ensure that ICE and Border Patrol agents are paid on time and in full, as we have been doing for them throughout the Democrat shutdown. Immigration enforcement will continue, and our border will remain secure with no murderers, drug dealers, or criminals of any kind entering our country. The American people should use this opportunity to reflect on the tens of millions of illegal aliens, including many violent criminals such as murderers, rapists, human traffickers, child molesters, and more, that Joe Biden and his far-left liberal Democrat cronies in Congress, led by Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, invited and allowed into our country for 4 years before I took office. These, again, provide funding to secure our border or enforce our immigration laws. The Democrats are the party of open borders for criminals, crime, zero immigration enforcement, defending the police, and allowing the worst of the worst to have get-out-of-jail-free cards. They want America to be open and available to violent criminals, thugs, and lowlifes, not our great and loving American patriots. Don't forget that in November. Win the midterms. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So basically, he's confirming that the GOP will be funding ICE DHS through a process that it does where it doesn't need the Dems' votes and pretty much bypasses the filibuster, which is very, very interesting. Let's see how this all plays out, and let's see how this goes. Because once he pulls this off, the people are going to see that Trump was able to open up the government, pay TSA, fund everything, and the Ds are going to be sitting there saying, okay, we're the ones who caused this. He's the one that fixed it. It doesn't look good. Every step of the way, Trump is shutting them down. Just like he created the new executive order. Nick Sorter put this out and said, President Trump has signed an executive order for restricting the use of mail-in ballots nationwide. This should go into effect before the 2026 midterm. Gunther Eagleman explains, because Howard Lutnick is explaining it, and he's in the video explaining it. It says, every ballot envelope will now get a USPS barcode. One envelope per vote, fully tracking. This is how you can ensure real accountability can be delivered if needed. Lutnick, none of this time where we have no idea. There's no observers to mail. There's no envelopes. There's no uncertainty. That's all going away. Mail-in voting just got secured. Absolutely. And you could see the Ds, they are panicking. You have Governor Tony Evers, Senator Mark Kelly, Governor Katie Hobbs, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. Republicans are complete phonies with their vote suppression scheme. Chuck Schumer says, see you in court. You will lose. Governor Tony Evers, this is bullshit and it's illegal. We'll see President Trump in court. Yes. Are they going to try to delay this? Are they going to push back on this? Absolutely. You think Trump wants him to? Yeah, he does. These are the states with the highest level of mail-in voting: Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Hawaii, Utah, California, Nevada, Vermont. Every single one of these states are Democrat-leaning states. Utah is the only one that is not. Oilfield Rondo says they're freaking out about mail voting harder than they freak out about anything because their strategy is to harvest fraudulent ballots. It's that simple. Absolutely. And you can see already the deep state players, the fake people, they're all out there trying to convince everyone that Trump isn't allowed to do this and he's a dictator for doing this. Catherine Clark put this out and said, Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Constitution, the times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislator thereof. Another illegal order by a wannabe dictator, she says. Well, it looks like she was corrected, and corrected pretty darn hard. David Clemens says, wrong. The Elections Clause gives states the initial role to set time, place, and manner, but expressly authorize Congress to enact nationwide rules for federal elections, House and Senate races, including voter registration, list maintenance, fraud prevention, and ballot procedures. The Supreme Court has interpreted manner broadly to include notices, registration, supervision of voting, protection of voters, prevention of fraud and corrupt practices, etc. The Help America Vote Act imposes mandatory minimum federal standards on states, statewide computerized voter registration lists, provisional ballots, and election administration improvements, and provides federal grants explicitly conditioned on compliance. States must submit plans showing how they meet these standards to receive funding. The National Voter Registration was also enacted under the Elections Clause. It mandates that states maintain accurate voter rolls, offer registration at certain agencies, and accept a federal mail registration form. Courts have upheld NVRA provisions as valid under the Election Clause precisely because they target voter eligibility verification and roll accuracy. Trump's EO explicitly cites both HAVA and NVRA as authority. It does not create new substantive rules that scratch. It directs federal agencies to implement and enhance existing federal statutory requirement using federal databases, SSA records, DHS's SAVE program. Moreover, Congress's power under Article 1, Section 8 to tax and spend for the general welfare includes the ability to attach conditions to federal grants to states. This is classic conditional spending upheld in South Dakota v. Dole, 1987. Conditions must be unambiguous, related to the federal interest, and not coercive. HAVA already does exactly this. Grants are withheld or conditioned on states meeting federal election administration standards. The EO, Section 5, authorized withholding federal funds from non-compliant states, localities, where authorized by law. This is not a new commandeering of state legislators. States can decline the funds if they wish. President confirms Congress and the executive administrating congressional appropriations can use the purse to encourage compliance without directly dictating state election codes. Finally, Trump's EO's core mechanism operate through federal entities like the post office, not state legislators. USPS rulemaking directs the Postmaster General to require barcoded, trackable official election mail, envelopes to transmit ballots only to voters on the federal state verified mail in absentee participation lists. USPS is a federal agency. The president may direct its operation via executive order. States are not forced to change their own mailing processes. They simply cannot use federal post office service for non-compliant ballots if they want this service. This avoids the anti-commandeering doctrine, Prince v. United States, 1997, which prohibits the federal government from forcing state officials to enforce federal law. Here, the federal government is regulating its own property, mail, and funds. Once Congress has acted via HAVA and NVRA, federal requirements preempt conflicting state practices for federal elections. The Democrats are toast. And if you look at this, every step of the way, you can see Trump is putting everything into place to protect the elections. He just shut down their mail-in ballot scheme. Now, I do believe at this point in time, the Ds, they realize they can't win this whatsoever. And this is why Nancy Pelosi was out there pushing the agenda of vote flipping. It's been done on purpose. And you could see they know that there's no way they're going to be able to win this whatsoever. It's going to be completely and utterly impossible. So yes, will the Republicans, through everything that Trump is doing, will this then protect the elections? He set up many, many levels, so many levels that it gives us an edge. Now, if he uses the next level of protection, which is an executive order, if we don't get the Save America Act, which I don't believe we're going to get, that is full protection on what they're trying to do. And this is why Nancy Pelosi wants to use the vote flipping. Now, in his executive order, I think with what happened in Arizona and what happened in Fulton County, he can actually make the case that we should not use the machines, that we should use paper ballots only. Think about that. Seth Keshel says the following: Trump clearly knows some communist court will strike down his mail-in voting order, which will then be expedited to SCOTUS. SCOTUS, if you've been paying attention, is sick of mail-in ballot games, and all 6 Republican appointed justices appear to be ready to squash the concept of late-arriving mail-in ballots. I think the president is striking while the iron is hot and counting on the morons wearing out their welcome with the cheating. And I do believe he wants them to sue because he wants a Supreme Court ruling. And this will shut down everyone. Joe Lane says, I've been telling people for years that Trump's strategy is set legal precedent for future safeguards. Trump welcomes all these lawsuits while the panicans whine and complain. One of the biggest and most important battles that Trump won in his first term was to flip the courts, especially the Supreme Court. Trump controls the Supreme Court, no matter how much the panicans complain about the individual justices. Trump has yet to really lose at the Supreme Court over his executive orders. Do you think that's just a coincidence? Do you think he's just getting lucky? Something people are going to have to realize is that the majority of the Supreme Court already know that Trump is a wartime president and is waging war against an enemy insurgency that has infiltrated our entire government. This real war is backed up by the Supreme Court majority and is being hidden legally under the state secrets designation. Trump will continue to win at the Supreme Court and expects the Democrats to file lawsuits over every single EO that he signs. Because why? He builds the case against the deep state players. He gets the final ruling against them, which gives him all the leverage. And none of these things can be used later on. Cynical Public has put this out and said, I think a lot of people get confused when Trump signs an EO that everybody knows will get challenged in court. It's kind of his way of doing what Democrats have done for decades. Democrats would coordinate with NGOs to bring suits along certain Democrat preferred ideological lines, and then a Democrat DOJ would weakly defend the case. This is how Democrats use the courts to basically erase many of the constitutional powers of Congress. Trump has stood that practice on its head by signing EOs that reflect the 80% side of the 80-20 issues. Knowing full well the Democrats will sue, he forces Democrats to vocally defend the 20% issues. He shifts the overtone window in his favor. He doesn't care if he loses in some blue district's courts. He wants to ride the issue hard all the way to SCOTUS. He might win, he may not, but either way, he forces Democrats to admit we're the baddies. So basically, you could see Trump's strategy right there. It tells you and shows you everything you want to know. And think about it. The people right now, they are completely and utterly behind him. Trump put out a couple of polls on Truth. And the first one is, and this is the question, President Trump's use of tariffs to reduce America's trade deficit and create a more fair playing field for American workers and businesses. 91% approve, 69% strongly approve. If you look at the next poll, it says President Trump's decision to use military force in Iran to remove the Ayatollah Khamenei and his terrorist regime from power in order to stop their nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. 89% approve, 70% strongly approve. Here's the next one. President Trump arresting Venezuela dictator Maduro and removing him from power. 92% approve, 75% strongly approve. So when you look at what Trump is doing right now, is he playing 2D chess, 3D chess? No, I think he's playing 12-dimensional chess. Faytux Network put this out and said, a Trump administration official tells Axios, this isn't 3D chess, it's 12-dimensional. He contradicts himself regularly, so nobody knows what he's thinking. It's on purpose. And every time you see Trump going back and forth, that is exactly what he's doing. It's the art of deception. He's confusing people, so people don't know what is true intentions are. And if you have people confused, they don't know how to fight it. And that's what he does every single time. He's playing the most important chess game of his life. And we've said this before, and he said it. He's playing against violent people. He's playing against nice but violent people. He's playing against very smart people. And he has to lead them down a certain way. And yes, it leaves people confused. It leaves people to think that he doesn't understand what he's doing, but he knows exactly what he's doing. He's done this his entire life. And now he's using this on the deep state players, using it on the fake news. And yes, some of the people get caught up in it because they don't understand what he's doing. But you can see every single time he wins. And it seems that we're going back to the moon because tonight at 6:24, Trump says, Eastern Standard Time, for the first time in 50 years, America is going back to the moon. Artemis 2, among the most powerful rockets ever built, is launching our brave astronauts farther into deep space than any human has ever gone. We are winning in space, on Earth, and everywhere in between. Economically, militarily, and now beyond the stars. Nobody comes close. America doesn't just compete. We dominate, and the whole world is watching. God bless our incredible astronauts. God bless NASA. God bless the greatest nation ever to exist, the United States of America, President DJT. And this is absolutely incredible. It reminds me of the time of Kennedy, if you really think about it. But you can see Trump right now, he has all the leverage. And every day that passes, he's gaining more and more leverage. Why? Because the patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.